Now, before we get started, I want to read you a job post, or at least the imagined version of one based upon the subtext put into real ones. Senior platform engineer, remote, 165 to 210, which is directionally competitive in the ridiculousness that's the San Francisco job market. And it reads normally enough. You own the IaC platform, you partner with developer teams, you review 40 and change Terraform pull requests a week. This sounds like a job a lot of you watching this either hold or have held until you start continuing down the list. Comfortable with surprise architecture decisions arriving in production after the fact. Now, to be clear, that's not what they say. They say experienced with or responsible for. Comfortable. You should be okay with this happening to you. And the subtext gets more interesting. Patient communicator, able to explain why we can't just Terraform apply to production again. Now, no one's going to say that or admit to it in public, but that's a job description that exists because it's been edited at least once in anger. And, of course, the AI-generated code aspect, the fact that without making it personal is in the description here, is one of the more honest things you'll ever see. Unfortunately, it won't wind up in the real description. I guess I have theories about what happens when people start putting things like that into the job description, because it happens a lot. Then may as well just go whole hog. You want to work here? Terrific. You need a therapist reference required on the way in. If they were honest about this, you'd close the tab before applying unless you're absolutely desperate. On-call covers holidays, weekends. That one time the intern had an idea. Past tense because they've already braced for it. They know they have a terrible work-life balance and it's not changing anytime soon. And of course, unlimited PTO because that's a terrific scam. You won't use it, and they could not possibly be more direct about that. This is, of course, a joke posting that I made up because nobody publishes a listing that is this honest that demands therapist references. But every absurd line I've thrown in here is the subtext of a real surface level reasonable bullet point from several listings I was looking at earlier this month. Real companies, real listings, a little less honest. Comfortable with surprise architecture decisions is the subtext of a fast-paced environment, willingness to wear many hats. Patient communicator, again, is the subtext of strong stakeholder management skills. We've all seen that one. And the ability to debug AI-generated infrastructure code without making it personal is the subtext of mentoring junior engineers these days. The job market encodes what teams are wrestling with at any given point, now more than ever. They just won't say it out loud. So I say it out loud on stages, at conferences, which is a thing that I can get away with because I am unemployable in anything approaching a normal sense. The reason I'm starting here is because the talk you're about to be subjected to is about how we got here in the first place. Because AI speaks Terraform like a freaking tourist. It can string together the right words, it can hold the phrasebook, it can confidently order something off the menu, and then about 30% of the time what shows up is actively on fire. So today I'm going to walk through why that's happening, what the model can't possibly know, and what you can do about it before your job posting starts asking for therapist references too. And yes, there are options other than simply rage quitting. Now, I'm Quinn. I help companies figure out what they're spending on large cloud estates and why they're doing that. I also published last week in AWS, which is a newsletter that cheerfully ridicules AWS announcements every Monday because I have emotional problems that I make yours. I believe firmly that when it comes to cloud, cost and architecture are the same thing. So a surprising amount of what I do for a living is ultimately reading other people's Terraform. Specifically, I read the parts they really wish I wouldn't. And the reason that matters for this talk is that I've spent the last couple of years watching teams more or less hand AI a keyboard and ask it to write infrastructure code. And I have notes and opinions. Let's begin with the training corpus. Corpus sounds a lot like corpse, and that's kind of how it feels. Where did the model learn Terraform in the first place? Well, the same place lots of us did. A few years back, the exact number that I will not be sharing because it's embarrassing and shameful, I posted some honest Terraform, by which we mean genuinely shitty, to Stack Overflow. I was a less experienced engineer at the time, and I had several questions. Now, I asked how to make my broken thing work. Some helpful strangers told me. I fixed it. Then it was closed as off topic, but that's just Stack Overflow for you. Then I went to my client at the time and asked if I could post the actual working Terraform to Stack Overflow as a thank you to the community. Pay it forward, help others learn from my own missteps. And my client looked at me the way that you look at someone who's just suggested putting your house keys on the company blog. He explained slowly and with great patience, while also grinding his teeth to powder, that working production Terraform is essentially a map of how to attack a company. Module structure tells you the trust boundaries and org structure. Naming conventions tell you the team layout. The one weird VPC peering setup tells you that we acquired somebody and never quite finished the whole integration story. You don't post that. You don't post any of that. So I didn't, and neither did anyone else. Ever, at any company that paid them. So what's left is the corpus, a bunch of shitty broken Terraform, and that directionally is what AI has learned Terraform from. It learned from the questions, and the questions are by definition the broken stuff. People don't post working code to Stack Overflow except by accident. They post a thing that isn't working and they ask, why is it doing this? It learned from the answers, and the answers are also of varying quality, but are uniformly condescending. Some are correct for the wrong reasons, and some are correct as of 2018, deprecated as of 2020, removed as of 2022, and cited confidently here in 2026. It learned from tutorials. Every tutorial assumes you're starting from a blank AWS account, which is a state your company has not been in since several presidential administrations ago. It learned from vendor documentation, which assumes you read the 47 prerequisite pages, then tells beautiful lies about them. You did not read that documentation, and thanks to some horrifying blocking behavior, neither did the AI. It didn't learn from production. And here's a related thing that the corpus is always silent on. Tutorials are going to walk you through the first Terraform apply, the bootstrap. The first apply against the empty account is invariably unique. There's no state file yet. There's no pre-existing resources, hopefully. There's no, we already have a VPC named primary that we can never recreate. Every apply after that first one is operating against the accumulated reality of what has happened in production. AI keeps writing the first apply because the first apply is what the corpus shows. Production is the millionth apply, and they're very different shaped problems. The models love to treat these things as the same problem. So here's a quick story on what happens when a tutorial is your only teacher. A consultant we once employed learned Terraform from one of those greenfield tutorial posts. He wound up giving our production environment the entire 18/8 IP space, which is not a private subnet. It is not an unroutable IP. It belongs to the United States Department of Defense before they changed their name to something dumber like an AWS service. The tutorial did not mention this. The tutorial doesn't mention any of the IP ranges that are already spoken for, which is most of them, because why would it? This tutorial assumes you're starting from a blank account on planet Earth with an empty internet in 2009. This is the corpus that AI learned from. This is why your AI cheerfully goes ahead and suggests resources that GCP deprecated 3 years ago. It learned from the corpus that says they exist. It didn't learn from the corpus that says they don't anymore. The model wasn't lying so much as it was just operating on a phrasebook that they had not updated. This is also why your AI keeps reaching for AWS instance and AWS security group when you actually wanted whatever the hell the modern thing is. The volume of training material in the old way swamps the volume on the new way. And AI makes this worse, incidentally, because now just the bot will do it and you don't ask those questions in public anymore. The model is doing exactly what it was trained to do, just optimizing for what most of the corpus said rather than what the current docs wind up saying. You're not arguing with the AI, you're arguing with the median of 15 years of internet posts about Terraform, many of them crappy. Let me give you a quick example or two because you asked. The first is AWS S3 Bucket. AI writes inline blocks for versioning, lifecycle, encryption, and it honestly looks fine. It compiles on provider 3. Great. Throws deprecation warnings on 4 and hard errors on 5. versioning matters here. The failure mode on a half-migrated code base is encryption configuration that doesn't apply that the author thinks it does. The bucket looks encrypted but is not, and you'll only find that out during the next audit. Thankfully, by default now, all S3 buckets are encrypted, just maybe not the way you want them to be. Another example is the AWS EIP, the Elastic IP address. Provider version 5 back in 2023 deprecated VPC equals true because they killed EC2 Classic. This is all things. Provider 6, almost a year ago, last June, removed it entirely, but AI will still cheerfully go ahead and write the dead one. It's the same shape. The plan errors on apply. If you're lucky, your CI/CD system caught it. If not, you found out at 3 in the morning when it auto-applies, breaks, and things start shrieking for help. If you don't pin your provider versions and you don't grep the AI output for these patterns, AI is going to quietly drag you back to 2019, and not in the good, peaceful way we all kind of wish we could go back to 2019. And it's so confident is the worst part. The models are confident, and this is the part that messes everyone up the most, including me. The model writes Terraform in complete syntactically valid, well-formatted blocks. It explains itself. It cites best practices. It uses the right indentation, for God's sake. I never do that. Nothing about the surface of the output tells you, I'm pretty sure this is right, but I've not been to this country in 3 years and the menu has changed. Confidence is a presentation choice. The model is confident about everything. It is confident when it's right. It's confident when it's wrong. It's confident when it is making stuff up. That confidence does not vary with the correctness, which is, I would argue, the worst possible behavior pattern in a tool that you're giving production credentials to. If I'm interviewing someone and they are confidently wrong and start bluffing, they will not be getting an offer this week. And yet, it compiles is the bar that most teams have set around this. Terraform Validate is a syntax checker. Terraform Format makes it look pretty, but neither one tells you that the code you just generated is going to do what you want. The water in a glass also compiles. That doesn't mean it's what you ordered. Now, because everything I just said about the training corpus is true, but it's not the deepest version of the problem, because even if the model had been trained on the actual production Terraform of every Fortune 500 company on the planet, even if Anthropic and OpenAI somehow had perfect, current, well-documented ground truth infrastructure as code, the model would still be a tourist, because Terraform, for better or worse, is not the kind of thing you can learn just from reading it. Terraform is a series of one-way doors. I want you to sit with that for a second. Most of the resources you manage with Terraform are databases. Yes, everything's a database. Queues or accounts. Things that hold state. Things that hold customer data. Things that if you accidentally destroy them, you don't get back. Code you can rewrite. Production data you cannot. I work with stateless stuff a lot because if I blow away a web server farm, that's funny. We'll talk about it at the bar. If I blow away the data warehouse, it's not going to be funny, and we're going to talk about it in the unemployment line because the company folded. Every plan you read from Terraform Plan is a question that ends in "Are you sure?" and every apply is that door that closes behind you. Production is sediment. It is geological. The bottom layer is whatever you built first. On top of that's whatever you slapped on when the first layer started smoking, some of which you did in the console. Let's be honest here. ClickOps. We use the console and lie about it. Above that, the reorg that broke the ownership model for 8 months. And every one of those layers is currently and going to continue to be load-bearing. Every one of those layers has a reason, and the reason is almost never written down. The person who knew the reason left in 2022, and you replaced them with a contractor because AI wasn't good enough yet. Welcome to your environment. Well, why don't we just rip out the old auth model and rewrite it cleanly? Modern best practice. Yes, that sentence in your code base is probably the most expensive sentence anyone could ever say out loud, other than "it's one managed NAT gateway, what could it cost?" It's also a sentence the model will say to you on any given Tuesday. It's going to look at your auth module, notice it's structured weirdly, and confidently propose a cleaner version. It can't see that the weirdness is the only reason your SOC 2 auditor signs off on it. It can't see that the weird shape is a fence around a 2019 incident. It can't see that the load-bearing column. It just sees the column, and columns in tutorials are normally a different shape. The model has no concept of load-bearing weirdness. But that's production, because almost everything in your environment is load-bearing weirdness. I call my staging environment theory, because so many things work in theory, but not in production. One data point on what just clean it up actually costs, by the way. I've done a wholesale Terraform rewrite and for the company I'm at now, and we paid a consultant to do it from scratch. It took him a full month. Our environment is neither big nor complicated. If that's the size of the engagement for a small, simple environment, what do you think it looks like for yours? At your scale, assuming you work for real companies, the answer invariably becomes you don't. This is your life now. The model that proposes to clean it up is asking you to commission a consulting engagement it doesn't even know that it's asking for. If you're sitting here watching this thinking, but my company is well documented, the model would do fine, I would like to gently push back with a sledgehammer here. Because the amount of context that lives only in oral freaking tradition is so much higher than you think it is. The runbook says follow these scripts, but it doesn't often say why these steps are in this order. The postmortem says that we now require X, but it doesn't say why this requirement is a surprise third rail. And the why is the part the model, and also juniors, need. The why is the part you almost invariably do not have written down. It can read your README, but it cannot ask the senior engineer who got paged at 3 a.m. what they were thinking. Because that conversation, the one you have when someone says, wait, why do we do it this way? That's the conversation the model doesn't get to be in. Okay, so this is fun. Diagnosing things is always great, but you came here for a prescription. And the rest of this talk is a 3-layer defensive framework for dealing with AI and infrastructure code. And it's not, don't use AI. I'm not naive. That ship has sailed. Your developers are using AI, whether or not your platform team has a position on it. The question is whether you've thought whether or not what you're going to do about it. So 3 layers. Each one stops a different kind of mistake, and each one is something you can do when you're done with this conference and go back to production. So the first layer is that AI is your intern and not your architect. And that intern framing matters because it sets the boundary correctly. An intern is genuinely useful. An intern can produce real work. An intern can save you hours, but you do not generally give your intern your AWS root credentials and say, decide what our database strategy is going to be for the next 3 years. What you do is you give an intern boilerplate. You give an intern things you know the answer to but don't want to type. You give an intern things when you can review the output and immediately figure out whether it's right or not because you're teaching them something. That is exactly the right shape of work for AI in your infrastructure as code pipeline. Here's what AI is great at in this domain. It is great at producing the boring parts. Tagging, yes. Naming, yes. The 15th nearly identical resource block, yes. The variable definitions you'd otherwise have to type out longhand, sure. Documentation comments, you don't have any of those already. Variable descriptions, you didn't even know Terraform supported that. The kind of thing where the right answer is mostly mechanical and your real value add is the consistency around it. It's great at filling in patterns. If you have an existing module and you need a new instance of the pattern, the model is very good at producing the new instance because that's the version of the problem where it actually has the context. The existing pattern's right there in front of it. It's good at the transcription problems. Here's a screenshot of an architecture diagram on a napkin and a whiteboard. Give me the Terraform skeleton. That is a translation task. The model is fine at translation. One more thing it's genuinely good at, and this surprised me, it is good at planning a migration to a new Terraform layout when you're reorganizing modules. State moves, refactoring diffs, the whole tedious bookkeeping of, I want this resource in that module instead. For the first time, large-scale Terraform reorganization might actually be feasible. But there are 2 enormous caveats here with my whole chest that I'm saying here. Test every step of the migration with paranoia that I usually reserve for production deploys, and never, ever let the AI run the migration. It can plan the moves. A human runs the moves with eyes open, one resource at a time. The AI is a planner here, not an executor. Now here's what AI is bad at. It's bad at any decision that requires knowing things you didn't write down. It's bad at trade-offs. Should we use a managed service or run our own? Well, that depends on your team size, your operational maturity, your contracts, your data residency requirements, your entire philosophy, and how much your CFO is currently screaming. The model knows none of those things. One of my projects, and I'm not kidding here, uses Vercel instead of AWS Amplify because I got tired of reminding Claude that AWS Amplify is an actual thing that exists. It is bad. What's our standard? It will cheerfully invent one for you. The standard it invents will not be your standard. Your standard's on a Confluence page that someone wrote in 2022, and only 3 people have read, 2 of whom have left the company. It is bad. Is this actually the bug we need to fix? It's going to fix what it sees. What it sees is rarely the actual cause. Practically, what does this look like here? Well, it looks like a pull request from AI is reviewed at a higher bar instead of a lower one. The temptation is the opposite because it'll pass the linter. Well, AI did it, so I don't have to look that hard, which is exactly backwards. The AI did it, so you have to look harder because, again, the AI is a tourist. It looks like large architecture changes never originate from an AI prompt. They originate from a human decision. The AI may help write the code that implements the decision, but it doesn't get to make the decision. It looks like you have a written internal answer to what is AI allowed to ship without a human in the loop, and your answer can be nothing. That's a fine answer. The thing that is not a fine answer is, we never thought about that. The second layer is to document the shadows, and this is the layer that surprises everyone because it isn't actually about AI, it's about the thing the AI just exposed. The format I prefer is architecture decision records, ARDs, and it's a simple pattern. When you make a non-obvious decision, you write a short markdown file, title, date, context, the decision, the trade-offs you considered, the thing you decided not to do, and why. It doesn't have to be long. Most of mine are under a page. The point is not to write a thesis. It's to capture the conversation that happened in Slack on a Wednesday afternoon before the conversation falls out of the searchable retention window. 12 months from now, when somebody, human or otherwise, looks at the module and goes, why is it this weird? There's an answer. And the answer might still be, we don't remember and we should fix it because that's a valid answer. It's much better than the absence of an answer. Let me give you a concrete example here. I run a home Kubernetes cluster because of my own emotional problems, and I am exactly the kind of person that does that. Some of my workloads run as a single replica with a persistent volume attached. Database monitoring, that sort of thing. They all use the default deploy strategy, which is rolling update. That default is wrong for those workloads, and it took an outage for me to figure out why. When a node dies suddenly, Kubernetes waits 5 minutes before noticing. Until then, the volume stays attached to the dead node, and the replacement pod cannot mount it. The workload just down for 5 minutes, watching itself fail. The fix is one line of YAML, a recreate strategy instead of rolling update on every single replica workload that has a persistent volume. Now, my ADR is 3 paragraphs. The recreate strategy for single replica stateful workloads. The context is the rolling update plus single replica plus RWO volume equals a 5-minute outage on node failure because the old pod has to release the volume before the new one can claim it, and a dead node doesn't release anything. So the decision, go ahead and release those workloads. Go ahead and switch those workloads to recreate. Consequence is a brief downtime during deliberate redeploys in exchange for not being stuck during the bad ones. It's 3 paragraphs. That is the whole artifact. 6 months from now, when somebody asks, why is this recreate instead of rolling update? The answer's in the repo. The next time AI proposes, let's standardize on rolling update, the human reviewer has the context to push back without having to remember the original outage personally. And for things too small to deserve an ADR, an inline comment that says, this looks redundant, it is not, see incident IR 204 is worth its weight in gold. Same idea. Smaller container. Your top level READMEs also need a section that I'm going to call what is this and what is it not? Because a surprising amount of misunderstanding comes from people, including AI, assuming a module does more than it actually does, or less, or differently. If your module is a thin wrapper around an upstream Terraform registry module, say so. If your module deliberately doesn't handle a use case that looks like it should, say so. If your modules name something misleading because of a renaming we never finished, please, for the love of God, say so. This is the sort of thing that lives in the head of senior engineers. They picked it up over time. The new hire does not, and AI does not. So writing it down is the cheapest insurance you can possibly buy. Now, here's an uncomfortable realization about runbooks. I've never yet seen one that you could follow blindly in order with no understanding and arrive at the right outcome. Not once, not in any environment I've ever consulted with, because every real runbook has a step that requires you to know why you're doing this in order to know whether to skip it today. If the cluster is healthy, restart the leader first. Otherwise, find the secondary that's been up for the longest. That second clause is doing work. It's asking you to look at the room, judge the situation, and choose. A runbook is documentation around an act of judgment. It is not a substitute for it. This is bad news for AI because AI cannot make that judgment call. The model can read your runbook. It cannot weigh whether today is the skip step 5 day. The runbook needs the why, and the why is not on the page. It's also bad news for the new hire and their second on-call shift, who is in a different sense also a tourist. And the fix is the same. Either rewrite it so the judgment calls are explicit, or document the why so the operator, human or otherwise, has the context to choose from. Either is fine. Where the current state, which currently lives in the head of one staff engineer who's in Croatia for 2 weeks, isn't. The bigger pitch I'm making here is that the AI turns oral tradition into a liability, because for decades, the senior engineers know was a load-bearing assumption. It worked, mostly. Junior engineers don't have the time anymore, and AI absolutely doesn't. AI accelerates the rate of code production by an order of magnitude. So document the shadows, not because AI requires it, because the speed at which your environment now changes requires it. And layer 3, shouldn't have to say this, Terraform plan is your friend. It's 2026, and yet here we are. We started with talking about one-way doors. Layer 3 is about that. And about the fact that production is mostly one-way doors, and AI is generating code at a rate that's far faster than your reviews can keep up with. So Terraform plan is the only thing that stands between AI's confidence and your weekend. It is not optional. It is at this point an audit trail. If your pipeline runs apply without a human reading the plan in 2026 with AI in the loop, that is a story that will end in an outage, an incident report, and a job posting that has the word therapy in it. Now, I'm going to defend a hill that gets wildly unpopular at times, including this moment. The plan must be read by a human. Out loud is fine, but skimming it isn't. Yes, it's long. There's 500 resources in that plan. I can't read every line. Sure you can. You'll be bored, but you're going to notice things. It'll turn out to be important. Number of wait, why is it changing that? Moments that I have had reading plans I wasn't supposed to be reading is alarming. But I'll meet you halfway, because if your plans are too long to read, your unit of change is too big. It generates lots of small changes. Great. Push your pipeline towards lots of small plans. Each small plan's reviewable. Yay. Do that instead. It's not that it's too long, it's that it's undifferentiated. Trust but verify, because in the age of AI, becomes never trust, always verify. Not because the model's bad, because the volume of plans has gone up and the cost asymmetry has shifted. Read the damn plan. And the line you always want to care about is destroy. If to destroy appears in a plan and the destruction is intentional, apply. If it appears and it's not intentional, you have just been saved by a human reading a piece of text. That is the entire job. AI doesn't flinch at it. AI generates the resource. It doesn't have feelings about it. It doesn't feel the cost of removing it. You can do this automatically to flag it, but for God's sake, be careful here. And on the topic of guardrails, policy as code is your friend and will remain so, because if you're using something like Open Policy Agent, Sentinel, or Spacelift's policy framework, turn on the strict version. Block destroy operations on production data resources until the PR has a specific label. Block changes to IAM that doesn't have a security team approver, all the baseline stuff. Block changes to production VPC that doesn't have a network team approver. These rules aren't new. The arrival of AI just changes the math. Instead of how often will a human accidentally do this when the number was small, the question is now how often will an AI confidently do this, and that is statistically larger. So remember this job posting from the beginning, the one that seemed absurd 30 minutes ago? It's not absurd. It is Thursday. And what happens when AI generates infrastructure code faster than humans can review it is this. This is the outcome when there's no boundary, no documentation, no verification. AI speaks Terraform like a tourist. That's the title of the talk, and it is still my pitch, but tourists can learn. AI can't. Tourists need a guide. Tourists need context. They need someone to gently stop them before they accidentally insult the locals or order something the restaurant doesn't have. You're at an infrastructure as code conference. You are the guides. That's the whole talk in one slide. AI is the intern. You are the architect. Read the plan. If you do these things, AI is a multiplier, and if you skip them, AI is the most expensive intern you've ever hired, and the bill arrives in production. Because every conference talk that doesn't talk about this is a disaster. Thank you very much for putting up with me. I am Corey Quinn. I have appreciated listening to this, my own voice specifically. Please enjoy the rest of the event, and thank you for coming. I'll be around if you have any Q&A.
All right, we're going to field some questions for Corey. I see there's a couple questions in the chat. So I'll have Corey come on stage and we'll answer a few of the questions.
Yeah, the most common one is, what the heck is wrong with me? But don't worry, I get that one a lot. Family members. Let's see here. There's a few of the questions are the audio issues. Yeah, sorry, I'm blaming the AI for that one. Yeah, but there's a button you can just click in OBS to do it. Yes, but the AI didn't click it. So there we go. How to set guardrails for Terraform apply CI workflows. This is going to cut against the idea of CI/CD, but I still think you need to have humans review the truly important changes. And at a starting point, when you're adopting a lot of these AI-powered workflows, every change has to be viewed as important. Maybe put it in dry run mode, see what it would suggest, and start finding the mistakes. And I promise there will be mistakes. Part of the problem, of course, is that I don't have anything to sell you all in this space. So therefore, I don't have a magic solution in a box that'll solve these things. I'm just sort of here, I'm like your conscience whispering into exactly one ear. Like there needs to be like the angel or devil, you decide, on the other shoulder to provide the counterpoint with something to sell. Other questions, comments, audio. Will the audio be on demand later? Presumably, if people are demanding enough. AI code review for AI generated code best practices. Make them smaller. Begin triaging. My belief is that there are some changes that absolutely can be considered trivial, and classifiers can start figuring that out. Big stuff, yeah, be a little more cautious. And frankly, if you're going to have AI reviewing code, what you really need to do is invest significantly in improving your test infrastructure. I think that's where a lot of people are falling down. Will be a good policy as code strategy and tool. Let's see here. Dear Lord. Having a policy as code is one of those weird things where you're trying to express something in tools that are often not well suited for it. You are foundationally trying to solve a human problem with technology in some cases, is depending on policies. Sometimes it works well. Sometimes you're trying to patch human behavior with software, when really the only thing I've ever found that does that effectively is a claw hammer. But you're not allowed to do that in most modern workplaces. Thanks, labor laws. Let's see, other questions, comments, concerns, personal attacks, criticisms. How do I feel about testing Terraform code? I think it would be a great idea. If you see people doing that, please send them my way. I'd like to witness it. In seriousness, I've been in one shop that did a tremendous job of doing CI/CD testing with this, powered by Jenkins, which should tell you the era we're dealing with here. It was 10 years ago, and I've never seen anything come close to it since. I wish there was more like that. Yes, there are places that do it in small scale, but this was an actual scaled out environment. I'm also a big fan of one of my personal favorite alerting systems is my email inbox. People start yelling at me when things break, and for some level of service, that's acceptable. In other scenarios, if users notice it, that's probably a bad thing. I just don't like people. That's why I don't have customer facing things.
All right. That's all the time we have for questions. Thank you so much, Corey.
Thank you.
Everybody, we're going to jump to the next session. Have a great rest of your day.